and Rather.
Good evening. Dan is off tonight. I'm John Roberts. The sounds from a high school massacre in progress. Authorities late today released the frantic and chaotic 911 tapes from Tuesday's killing spree at Columbine High School. This as suspicions grow that the two known shooters may have had help. CBS's Bill Whitaker is on the scene in Littleton, Colorado with late details. Bill?
John, we've seen the pictures and heard the reactions, but the 911 tapes released today add a harrowing new dimension to this tragedy. It's the bone-chilling soundtrack for these images of terror, one of the first 911 calls from an unidentified student inside the school.
Okay, we had a report of an explosion down there.
Just moments later, while terrorized students ran for their lives, you hear and feel the rising terror. A teaching assistant named Peggy calls from the library.
Do we know where he's at? I'm sorry? Do we know where he's at? Okay. On the library. He's upstairs. He's right outside of here. I am on the floor. Okay. You've got the kids there? And I've got every student in this library on the floor. You better stay on the floor. Is there any way you can lock the doors? Smoke is coming in from out there. I'm looking. Okay. The gun is right outside the library door. Okay. I've got the kids on the floor. I got all the kids in the library.
In the wake of this tragedy, the whole town seems to be questioning itself. Should someone have noticed Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were primed to explode? There were glaring signals. Harris had an alarmingly violent website. The boys made a class video of trench-coated gunmen shooting athletes. Harris wrote death threats over the internet. Yet a court official recently gave both boys glowing reports when they completed probation for breaking into a car. Eric is a bright young man who is likely to succeed in life, the officer wrote. Dylan is a bright young man who has a great deal of potential.
Didn't somebody see it?
Now, police have been criticized for missing signals with these kids. To make sure they don't miss any other signals, the police have interviewed now more than 500 people, and they're focusing on the friends of the two gunmen. John?
Bill Whitaker in Littleton, Colorado. Thanks. In an ocean of memorable and horrifying images from Littleton, few of us will ever forget the picture of one wounded student's desperate struggle to survive as the world watched. Tonight, Bob McNamara takes you beyond that picture to tell you the story of this young man's continuing struggle to survive.
He was the kid in the broken window. 17-year-old Patrick Ireland, with 3 wounds to the head, desperately pleading for help. And as other students ran for their lives and ambulances raced the wounded to hospitals, a SWAT team with an armored car finally reached him.
The cavalry was coming, and we didn't want him to jump and hurt himself unnecessarily.
It was the most searing image of a will to live. As wounded teenager Patrick Ireland was pulled over broken glass and dropped like a rag doll to safety.
It must have been a heroic effort on his part to get up and get out.
Doctors say a bullet to Patrick Ireland's brain has slurred his speech and disabled the right side of his body, effects similar to a stroke.
The most likely outcome is that he will have very significant weakness probably on his right side, although many people surprise us all the time.
For years, Ireland, on the left, has been close friends with Mackay Hall. They were together Tuesday when they were shot. And recovering from shotgun wounds, Hall deflected questions about the condition of his friend and talked of his own will to get better.
Even though it's a great tragedy, I'm not going to let it bring me down. I'm going to use it to motivate myself.
While Mackay Hall was headed home from the hospital today, Patrick Ireland may need years of recovery therapy. Still on a day of death and desperation, millions already know of Patrick Ireland's will to survive. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Littleton, Colorado.
Amid all this tragedy are 2 central questions. How did Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold meticulously plan this attack without anyone becoming suspicious? And were there obvious signs that went unnoticed? Let's take a closer look at that website attributed to Eric Harris. There are some disturbing images of a shotgun and knife-toting goth figure standing above burning skulls. Another clad in body armor shooting a victim. There is also a drawing of a Tech-9 machine pistol, one of the weapons used in the attack. And if the image is flipped over, scrawls on the back of the paper become quite clear. They are diagrams of bomb detonators made with model rocket motors. A group of rocket motors attached to what looks like a propane bottle. A similar device was found yesterday in the school's kitchen. There's also an illustration of a pipe bomb and a concealed knife that springs into action from the user's forearm. It would seem that something was going on in the young man's mind. The search for insights took CBS News correspondent Elizabeth Caledon far from the scene of the crime.
1,600 miles away from Littleton, Colorado, in Plattsburgh, New York, they're grasping for clues and answers. Eric Harris played Little League and went to elementary school here while his father worked at the local Air Force base. When news of the shooting broke, old friends here were stunned.
Because I took out my yearbook and I compared pictures, and sure enough, it was him, and I couldn't believe it.
Nora Bordeaux, Adam Pasty, and Kyle Ross spent several days on a whale-watching field trip with Harris where they took this picture of him. They use words like loving and friendly to describe Harris. No trace of violence, no hint of anger.
That's the picture that really, hits me the most, because in it, he's looks like the happiest kid there. He's having the time of his life. He has his big grin ear to ear.
All the guys are kind of troublemakers, but he even seemed tentative to do things like that. He was pretty quiet, but...
So he was never even an instigator?
No, not at all.
When the Plattsburgh Air Force Base closed down in 1993, Harris and his family were forced to move away. He said goodbye in 6th grade yearbooks.
Adam, you've been a great friend. Have a great summer. I'll send you a shirt from Denver. I'm going to miss all of you.
Now, looking back, his friends worry that being uprooted as he headed into adolescence may have been harder on Harris than they thought.
I think that he turned into something that he wouldn't have turned into if he stayed here.
The descriptions of Eric Harris as a friendly, loving boy make his spiral into violence and hatred all the more chilling. Where along the road from Plattsburgh to Littleton did such extreme changes take place, and why? Elizabeth Caledon, CBS News, Plattsburgh, New York.
And CBS News will have the very latest on the tragedy in Littleton on a special edition of 48 Hours After the Tears tomorrow night at 8, 7 Central Time on this CBS station. And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News.